I'll do a quick intro and then ask you to introduce yourselves while we ask for questions. So I'll ask questions while we also ask for introductions. Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to our final panel. But don't worry, we'll have the lounge open for another hour right after this half an hour. Uh, Yet again, we have a fantastic panel. Remember everyone of you so fondly, and some of you are probably connecting, meeting virtually after more than a decade. So fantastic. This panel is interesting because very often college is not, it's perceived as a place where you just climb up the ladder, get the highest GPA, and sort of get the best job and sort of live the life you think you want to. But very often, the things that you most remember about college are the clubs, the organizations, the activities, the friendships. And while you discover friends because of common interests, it's also a kind of a humbling experience to meet people from various backgrounds and different cultures. So my first question to you, Ratnika, because I haven't seen you in ages, is, and before the question, you answer the question, please tell us a little bit about your journey, because I'd also be really curious to know, is what you've been up to, and since the time you graduated from Cornell, and I know you did the HBS, MPA, and MBA program more recently. First question to you would be: I know you were an athlete back then in high school, but did you use other resources at campus, clubs and organizations, which then led to meeting interesting people, which then led to maybe a mindset, which led to career success or whatever? So it's a long question, but go ahead.
Sure. First of all, it's sad that it took COVID for us to catch up again. So it's really great to see you, Arjun, and it's really exciting to get to see other people and have the chance to reflect on what was probably a fantastic experience in life, which you were a big instrument in helping make happen. So I guess just to give you everybody a very, very quick intro, I studied environmental economics and science at Cornell, after which, like several other international students, I went into consulting for a few years, but always sort of interested in coming back into sustainability. I then went to Harvard for a joint master's between their business school and a master's in development economics at the Kennedy School. And then since then, I've kind of been full time in sustainability roles. So just wrapping up a year at the Environmental Defense Fund and starting a new job tomorrow with the Nature Conservancy, where I'm kind of focused on using market mechanisms to have conservation programs be targeted more effectively. I guess given that and sort of like taking a look back at, the extracurricular angle, I was an athlete. That was a very big part of my identity in school. But I think what college kind of was great for was, and some of you might have heard this from Divya and the others in the previous panel, right? Is you're almost sort of bombarded with an overwhelming set of choices for things you can choose to spend your time on. And I might sort of go the other way in saying, I took the route of sort of starting with a complete blank slate in terms of what extracurriculars I ended up pursuing. And I'm very glad I did. So the two things I sort of spent the most time in college, one was because, I'd wanted to come to the US to study environmental science and economics. I got really involved with a set of extracurriculars related to environmental organizations in school, global advocacy movement, research and sustainability, like sort of to try to explore whether this interest that I'd thought I had in high school was actually something that I wanted to spend a career in. And that was really sort of directly helpful because even though I didn't go into this full time when I graduated, it sort of gave me a very clear hypothesis for what I needed to do to like be able to come back to the field, which I now have. So I was very happy about that. The second thing was completely undirected, purely because I saw a demonstration that was interesting. Was I started doing debate competitively at Cornell. So um, you have debate teams in most colleges, and the form of debate that I did was called World's Debate, where you're given a topic 15 minutes before, and you sort of like prep in 15 minutes and speak, and it can be about anything. And there was no direct application. Like a lot of kids do debate because they want to go into law school, which I had no intention of doing. But I will say that that ended up being the most valuable thing I did in college in terms of how it taught me to think and how it taught me to learn. And like even today, I often actually think about the stuff I learned from that. It also ended up being at a personal level a great choice because some of my best friends today remain people from the debate team, and that is sort of indirectly how I ended up meeting my fiance. So one thing that was completely like directed was sustainability, and then debate was the undirected, and I'm kind of very glad I pursued both.
Hey, so thanks, and it's wonderful to know that college can also lead to uh, much more than just friendships. And congratulations. Um, moving on to the next section of this conversation, wanted to bring on Raghav. I know Raghav, you've had an interesting journey from high school to college, and then of course now being an entrepreneur is another adventure that you've embarked on. So, how was like UCLA being such a big school? That culture of work hard, party hard, maybe even have a like huge Greek life and all of that. What was it like for you moving from a small niche high school like Vasant Valley to a large ocean, almost at the edge of the Pacific?
So, hi everyone, I'm Raghav. I did my degree in mathematics and economics from UCLA, graduated last year, and I'm doing a few different things, but mostly in the entrepreneurial field. To answer your question, the Vasant Valley to UCLA thing, yes, obviously it was important, it was impactful, but I think more so it was just moving out from the CBSE way of educating to the American way. And I think the core difference is that the CBSE ways are very much focused on the what, like these are the facts, learn them, recreate them, you're good. But in America, for the first time, you were taught how to think. It's like these are the facts, but why are they so? Like I remember, so in mathematics, one of my classes in the final year, we had to prove y is one greater than zero, which sounds like a very obvious thing, but obviously at some point in history, you realize it was not. And I think so that was pretty cool. Like because America really just teaches you how to look at a problem, break it down, look at it in different ways. I think that was very valuable to me because that's something I use day in and day out. Like being an entrepreneur, run to your own thing. Your problems are not subjected to one field. There's everything you can possibly imagine. So the core skill of problem solving is, I think, something they really teach, and I think it becomes a little better in UCLA. Obviously, the size helps because there's a lot more going on. Like you have things right from the arts, the humanities, and the sciences and everything. In terms of Greek life, I was never very big on Greek life because of the whole the joining process. I don't fundamentally agree with the fact that one should be degraded in any way just to join a society, and I would not do that to myself. That being said, I did have friends in it who obviously, yes, said the pledging process sucks, but beyond that, it is obviously a lot of fun and it is contacts for life. So if that's something that you really want to do, that's great. But I also think that Greek life is a lot more valuable if you want to stay in America itself, because most of the people, especially like in a state school like UCLA, like people always say that Greek life is great for contacts and lifetime and this and that, but that really has to be looked into the thing because it's a time commitment. Like being an active member of a frat is a huge time commitment, obviously, and that's not even the joining process, but even afterwards. So if you like, let's say for me, I had to come back to India. I anyway wasn't like so. I didn't quite see the point in Greek life, but yeah, and obviously it goes without saying that like being in a frat is a lot of fun. Besides the contact parts, like the partying and all that kind of thing, that's all great. But I think one should just be like at least vaguely mindful of their general life goal before choosing to join a frat, because it can be, and I know, like as having spoken to my friends going during the pledging process, even though it's only a month out among 4 years, it's not easy on you even emotionally. It's a very, very tumultuous time in life, so make sure that you have a clear goal as to what you want out of that endeavor. But a lot of people just think that, oh, frat, join, party, drink, this, that, but there's a lot more to it. Like they really make you work for the party. And yes, obviously, work hard, play hard. I think no one, like, I don't know anyone who does that more than me, although it's usually like work hard, play harder. Obviously, that's a lot easier in LA. But yeah, I think college has enough time for you. I think the classes are made in a way where You can even really do gun for like those 3.9 kind of GPAs, even though I was not one of those kids, and still have a very, very active life. It's about managing your time. I think you like try to stay away from the Netflixes and all, and then you can like do both, because like when you live alone, especially, it's very easy to just get into bed and just end up watching TV for 4 hours. And I would be lying if I said I never did that. But I think if someone can have a little discipline in that and really like play outside, like there's a whole, especially let's say going in LA, right? You're like literally like the best things you can play in the world are there, and like so sort of just be venture out. Like I think lots of people just get tied to the idea of staying in the dorm, also because the general everyone is doing it, so you also end up doing it. But I think just be brave enough, especially at the start. Go for dinners alone, go to a movie alone, go to a museum alone. Like just be okay with doing stuff alone, and I think eventually you will event that the people will come.
Hey, I think this is a very interesting point that you ended with. And I also like the way you've sort of shared different experiences, and also right from understanding how the academics worked and made you think, to understanding the concept of Greek life and why it probably wasn't your thing. So thanks. We definitely want to have a follow-up question, but let's move on. Uh, Hey, hi, Manu, Vikram, Ditya. Love to have you share a little bit
Hi,
about
Arjun.
life at. Hi, let me pin you here. Uh, Love to hear about your life since the time you went to RISD and then beyond. So why don't you introduce yourself? And also the question for you would be, since you were in art and design school, there's so much practicum, and it's almost like getting ready for something creative in the creative field, and there's always that stress of working so hard with your studio work, looking for maybe assignments and commissioning work for other people, then looking for internships in a field which may or may not be very well paying. How was your journey as an artist? And how did maybe
Okay.
resources beyond
Yeah.
like academics help you? How did the extracurricular connections really define who you are now as a professional graphic designer and an entrepreneur?
Great. That's a couple of questions. Firstly, thanks for having me on here. And it's nice to connect with you virtually, unfortunately. Um, but just to give everyone kind of an overview of what I do and what's been my journey after RISD. I studied graphic design at RISD, and I kind of went through the OPT process. I didn't get my H1B, and but it also simultaneously kind of was contemplating moving back to India, because I was reading a lot of articles on what was happening in India, and it felt like India has a lot of opportunity for being able to kind of set up something in design, as compared to say New York, which is saturated with hundreds of design studios. So it felt like an opportunity, and it also felt like in a way a very exciting opportunity that I don't regret at all. And when I moved back, I was figuring out what I wanted to do, and I set up this design studio. And I can tell you that in the last 6 years, it feels like there is almost like tangible impact that has been created by the studio, and you can actually feel how you're kind of impacting this design landscape, which I think is still pretty nascent. And it's that entire journey has been super thrilling. And with that, there's also um, tons of opportunities that have kind of presented themselves, and it's been an incredible journey so far. We actually, my studio celebrated 3 years just last night. Um, so um, yeah, I was uh, it's been an emotional kind of roller coaster. Anyway, to your next part of which you the questioning, what was it like kind of being an artist, and what hardships that come with that? Um, what you politely didn't say is that a lot of artists are broke, and I think that's that can be true. I don't think that's at all incorrect. Um, I think it depends on what your goals are. If you're a purist and if you actually want to go the art route, it is a very difficult journey, and it can be a lot of. It doesn't have to be a difficult journey, but it can be a difficult journey, especially depending on the kind of work that you create in, kind of things that you wish to do. I think for design, however, there are a lot of practical kind of you know practical uses of design. And I felt like for the kind of design I was interested in, which ends up being digital, I think there's a growing kind of need for digital design, and it sort of overlaps with all different industries and you know and spaces. And I think there's more demand and more need. And I do think that there's like jobs in design are thriving, and I do think actually they pay pretty well as well. Especially if you're looking at like UX UI jobs, they're getting competitive salaries that are almost the same as a software engineer. So I think that's something that you should consider, and uh, that journey is probably easier. I do, however, have like an art practice on the side, and that's a completely different conversation, and that's a much harder sort of journey.
Hey,
I hope I
thanks.
answered your questions.
Yeah, yeah,
Five, six questions.
yeah. I know there was a bunch there. I just kept thinking.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I feel the one part which I wanted to connect with the topic was how extracurriculars and opportunities sort of collide
Yeah.
and helping you inspire you for your career in the future. Was there something that helped you think of what you were doing now back then?
I think one of the things with RISD specifically compared to other design schools is that you have, that sort of very close connection with Brown. And you get to take classes at Brown, you get to take classes at Brown, MIT, Harvard. You get to kind of overlap in many different ways, which I think is unique to RISD and is incredible. And that itself actually shaped me a lot. I was a part of the Brown International Organization. So I met and made a lot of friends at Rio. I was, and still people that I'm in touch with today, and that kind of it does become network. It does sort of become a space where you can kind of network for business, right? And I think outside of that, there was, I was living on Brown campus for a semester, so I got to like, meet a lot of kids from Brown. And then that's actually how I got into computer science, did a bunch of CS classes at Brown, which then kind of informed my design practice as well, which is why I ended up in sort of the digital side of design. And then the other thing, which is on the dev side, a lot of my friends were in development studies at Brown, and sometimes went on to kind of work and study at the Kennedy School or the GSD. Um, that a lot of that kind of work and those relations did inform a lot of my work, and then which is why at Nowform we do we kind of leverage a lot of human-centered design practices, and work in sort of that intersection of design for positive impact as well. So that's something we're kind of building out. It's still pretty nascent, but we have done some work in human-centered design for we just wrapped up a project, the cool project on healthcare for anemia in like India within sort of government workers, which was fantastic. Um, so I think all of those extracurriculars have definitely informed my work in more ways than one. And then RISD itself, you have a separate semester where you can get actually explore and kind of take up any other sort of discipline. So I took a bunch of just stupid things. Like I had glass blowing, I had, and I think that becomes a part of my personality as well now, and it's sort of become an extension of myself. So I'm always like playing and dabbling. Um, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's a great sort of point to make, where there are so many opportunities out there. The more people you meet and put yourself out to experience new things, uh, things fall in place in terms of career-wise too. Anushri, Tuku, how are you? And I'd love to have you here. I'm going to set you up here. So, the follow-up question from where Manu left is, figuring out, first want to hear your journey about going to a small liberal arts college and then moving to grad school in the East Coast at an Ivy League school, and along the way, the decisions you probably made for your career. What inspired you to make those decisions, and what are the subtle interconnections between things that you did beyond academics that led to where you are today?
Sure. So, first of all, I'm Anushree Dasgupta, and I am primarily in human resources and recruiting with Rivian, an EV company. And prior to that, I was at Amazon for 6 years. So, I actually did my bachelor's in communication with minors in sociology and ethnic studies. And yeah, I did go to Columbia and did my master's in sociology over there. For me, I let me start off by saying that I went to a university that did not have too much of an active, like Greek fraternity sorority lifestyle. Um, and the few that were there, they didn't really interest me too much. To me, at least personally, it seemed more of like a just a party culture. I was not too keen on, like the joining process. I think Raghav talked a little bit about that. Um, to me, it seemed more fruitful to join maybe something like a community action program in university, where I would actually be picking up skills that I could use in my work life. So that's actually what I ended up doing. I ended up joining community action program, organizing events, being part of the leadership, understanding maybe how I could understand more about incidents of racism, homophobia on campus, sexism on campus. I think someone was asking a question previously in one of the sessions about racism on campus. There are authorities and groups on campus that can help deal with these things, that will provide resources. And I was very fortunate that I was part of such an organization. And I think those are skills and resources that I picked up that I use even in the workplace today. I think, not just for my field, but really any of you going into the workplace, you probably have to deal with diversity issues, how to build a diverse environment for your workplace. Understanding basically how you can encourage creative thought process in the workplace, how to organize events, how to provide trainings and resources for employees. And really, those are the kind of skills you want to learn in your extracurricular activities, that you kind of want to take for the rest of your life. And at least for me, I haven't lost touch. I continue. COVID has, of course, made me take a back seat. But there are alumni events you can go to even afterwards, if you do happen to be in the States. But I think there are alumni events for some of the universities, even in, say, India. And that's a great way to find resources. And like Ratnika said, maybe in my case, also find a life partner through those resources, build lifelong friendships, have professional connections.
Hey, thank you. We'd love to now open it up for questions, as well as some final words for students who are headed out this year. I know it's been a very difficult year for most, especially for students who've pretty much been at home completing their high school or graduating from college. Even the one past year has been extremely challenging for everyone in colleges, at the administration, faculty members, everyone involved. So anything in terms of dealing with setbacks, failures, any advice, life gyan advice you'd like to share, Raghav, first, and then we'll move to anyone else who wants to answer.
I think is that one thing that I said at the end. Just it's tough. It was tough for me also at first, but just decide what you want to do and try to find people. But if you can't do it, just do the stuff, because you will find people on the way. It's inevitable. You stay in college for 4 years, not even for the first 3 months, you will find your group. That's not a problem. But most people, especially I guess, even especially in India, let's say even the school that I came from and the culture and all this, doing stuff alone is almost taboo, and which is why you end up. So many I know people, they just didn't end up doing anything because they couldn't find people to do it. So one thing I would do is first 6 months If you have to go somewhere alone, if there's a restaurant you want to go to, if there's a movie you want to see, if there's a museum you want to see, just go. Make sure you do it.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. Ratika, any advice on for students to take back tonight?
Yeah. One thing we didn't talk as much about was the relationship between extracurriculars and how that plays into recruiting as an international student. And all I'd say is, when I was in college, I definitely felt a lot of pressure to sort of tailor my extracurriculars or my classes to be able to secure jobs as quickly as possible. And it is harder as an international student to recruit if you decide to stay in the US, like no questions about that. But even when I was in college, and definitely like now being on the other side and sort of really seeing a lot of like bright young people in schools, like there is so much opportunity beyond the usual sort of roots of finance and consulting. So by all means, if that's what's interesting to you, like you should go for it. But I would say don't let your career trajectory and the extracurriculars you participate in be led by that fear. Like you don't need to join business clubs. You don't need to like start recruiting, like, or even thinking about like this as a freshman. You can explore and it'll work out fine no matter where you want to end up.
Hey, thanks. So pace it out and don't be in a rush to prove a point or kind of keep rising up the ladder. Manu, what about you? Anything that you'd like to share as advice to freshmen headed
Yeah,
to college?
sure. I would say also know how to balance things, especially maybe in your final year or the year before that. If you feel that there is going to be a discrepancy between the amount of maybe leadership or activity roles you can take part in, if it's going to impact your academics, know when to step back. Maybe you don't need to take on the leadership role. You just, take on maybe some of the organizational part. If you feel that you're not being able to say balance your lab times, those of you who are going to be in majors that have lab times, right? There are going to be times when maybe your group activity is going to clash with your evening class times. So make sure that you're keeping your calendar in play. At the end of the day, your academics are going to come first. So just there are students who basically give their fraternities or sororities more importance, and they won't actually take classes that say take place on a Wednesday evening because that's when they have to go to a frat or a sorority party. I definitely would not suggest that.
Hey, thanks. Hi, Vikramaditya. Final words from you, and yeah, we'll wrap up this session and go back to the lounge to meet everyone.
There. So, I mean, I think personally, uh, my only advice would be try as much as you can and go for as many things as you can before. Um, and what Raghav said, just go alone if you have to. I completely agree, and just have as many experiences. Because I feel like for me and for my journey, it's all of those networks and contacts that have that led me, to where I am today. And the more you're able to absorb, or like lectures, conversations you're able to be a part of, just sort of put yourself out there. That would be my advice. And also just try out like new things. I mean, specifically for design school, um, I think that a place like Grizzly has so many resources. By that, like I mean, physical, like hardware, those kind of resources are incredible, and we don't have access to that in India still in so many ways. So just get your hands dirty, try out everything, try understanding new tech, try understanding new ways of working, new processes, and that's really it. Especially for like design school.
That was great. Thank you. And we are about to close in another 45 minutes or so. So let's hop on to the lounge section and continue conversations. And I know folks who have questions can always meet us in small groups there. So thank you again, Ratika. Thank you, Anushri. Thank you, Vikramaditya and Raghav. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Arjun.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.